Sweet. Keep going, Willie. I want you to teach it for me.
Sorry, no.
Oh, no, that's great. Thank you. That's exactly right. These worthless fellows from, I think that's what my version said, worthless fellows from the tribe of Benjamin, where this Levite and his concubine were staying, and everything about this story is bad, that's the point, came out and said, hey, they said to the old man that they were staying with, you have a man in there. Bring him out so that we may know him. Now, middle of the night, a bunch of people trying to pound on the wall. Remember, the word no is what?
Sex.
It is a euphemism for sex. They don't want to shake hands with the guy. They don't try to break down the door to shake hands with him. They want to do something really bad. And that's why they respond by saying, no, do not do this evil thing. And this wonderful Levite who really loved his concubine and went back to rescue her and bring her back, says, up, get out there, throws her out, and she gets raped and abused all night. And she wakes up dead. She doesn't really wake up if she's dead, right? So she dies. And he just gets up casually like, all right, let's go. And she's dead. And he ends up chopping her into 12 pieces and sending it out to all the tribes. You guys see what happened? And they were shocked. They thought, that is unbelievable. In Israel, among God's people, a tribe has done something like that. They have come out and raped a person. So they came and they said, hey, we're going to gather together and we're going to fight. This is unnecessary. Now, and that leads to a battle, and we're summarizing a lot here, but it leads to this huge battle where the rest of the tribes go down to fight against Benjamin, and the Benjamites are standing with their guys. They're like, hey, our guys are our guys, and we're going to defend them. So even though they're much smaller, Israel comes and they have a big civil war. Israel ends up losing 2 of the battles, and only on the 3rd one do they finally prevail and beat the Benjamites in this terrible civil war. And what we discussed last week is important. I want everyone to make sure they know this. Why is it that why did God allow the northern tribes, the ones who were against what these Benjamites had done, why did he allow them to lose 2 battles and roughly, 40,000 men? Why would he do that? They were clearly being righteous. They were trying to punish these people who gang raped a person. So why did God let 40,000 of them die before giving them the victory in this battle?
They never asked God.
Okay, initially they didn't ask. They just said, God, who's going first? They just kind of threw it out there. That's true, and that is a part of this that we talked about. But there's another very important reason. Because I'm convinced if you just look at this and you read it, just this story in and of itself, you might come away with the wrong impression. You might think, wow, that doesn't make any sense. Why would God do that? Why would God allow 40,000 good men to die, and in the end of the day, only 21,000 of these guys of Benjamin ended up dying? So more good men died than bad. Why? Why would God do that? And there's an important distinction that we need to make. Does anyone remember what it is?
You call it the Eglon principle.
What does that mean? Besides, you're not feeling well or something. Besides what old guys experience. The Eglon principle, what do we mean by that?
Yeah, it's just one part or one person actually sin, and so it permeates through the whole, it's a sin considered by the whole tribe or by the whole country.
Yeah. When you remember when Achan, after the Battle of Jericho, stole some of that stuff, some of those spoils, that's sweet because Babylonian robes were in style, and he stole one. He had to get it. And he hid it under his tent. God let them lose the next battle, and he said, there's sin in the camp, you need to deal with this. That's just one person and his family going against God, but God holds them all responsible, and he says, hey, you should have never let this happen. So here what we actually have is Benjamites who are terrible. Why are you defending these awful, awful people? They should never have done that, but they did. But then you have the rest of the tribes who are not good. They are not innocent. They have been disobeying God right and left. They did not take the territories that they were supposed to. They have allowed false gods to come in and permeate their society. And yet all of a sudden when they see, oh, that's terrible, they get righteous and want to come down and start fighting. So if you look at this story from the big picture, reading Joshua first and then we get to Judges, every single tribe was guilty of sin. All of them. It just so happens that the Benjamites were defending a worse sin. Mm-hmm. So why did God let so many people die? Because he was keeping his word. God said, I will let you lose to your enemies. I will let you die in battle if you do not take over the land of Canaan, like I told you. And they did not take over the land of Canaan. So guess what? All the Israelites lose, roughly 10% of their warriors, and Benjamin loses 99% of theirs. They got punished worse. But that is, in my opinion, is why everyone gets punished. Everyone was guilty. So this is actually a way that God's bringing about justice. But if you're in that circumstance, it might be confusing, right? You might be thinking, God, why? I'm clearly on your side. And then you have to reevaluate and say, wait, am I clearly on your side? Just because you're more righteous than another person does not mean you're clearly on God's side, right? You can be better than, that's pretty easy, right? We all have the right person. And don't we thank God for that unrighteous person that makes us feel so good about ourselves? Man, if that person wasn't here, what would we do? What would we do?
Seth, I have a question.
Oh, thank you.
Back in 19, before they had this awful thing, and they said, when they went to that house, and he said, look, here's my virgin daughter and his concubine. I'll bring them out to you now.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't send his daughter, he sent the concubine.
After that, it doesn't say, it never says after that, as I recall, that he sent the concubine, that the virgin daughter was sent out. And it does say the Levite threw his concubine out. So that's a maybe for me.
He was so rotten, he would have sent his daughter out?
Oh, I believe it, because women were second-class citizens at that time. And if you got to save let's face it, we're the man, we got to be saved because we're important. Women, sorry.
Lot was willing to do the same thing with his daughters.
What's that?
Lot was willing to do the same thing.
Isn't that interesting how this mentality was it was so common? And I think it's encouraging because when you study the Bible, you actually realize God is going against the common thinking of the day. The common thinking of the day, women are lower class, they can be slave wives, they can't testify in court, they're unreliable. You go right on down the list. They're just not as good as men. That's what everyone said in that day. But then you have God treating them equally from the very beginning in Genesis. And then as far as punishment for murder goes, rape, things like that. So, yeah, but you're right. I don't know if that actually happened or not, but he did offer it. Which, boy, that makes people look good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Hey, especially in our day and age, it makes it look even worse. But it is bad. It's just bad. No matter who they sent out, it's an awful thing. There was one other thing that I don't really want to bring it up, but I need to because it's important. Last week we were talking about what happened towards the end here. In the beginning, it's also mentioned in the book of Judges how Caleb said, hey, I'm going to give my daughter Axa in marriage to the man who will come and take over this town called Kiriath-Sefer, which, by the way, that town is called Booktown, which is interesting. Were they smart people? Yeah, Kiriath-Sefer, which is the word for like the Sopharim, the scribes, the books. So I don't know why that is, but it's interesting. But that's a side note. And so Othniel, it says, Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, came and conquered it. And we talked a bit about that. Now, last time we determined they were probably cousins, right? Because if Kenaz was Caleb's brother and then the brother's son, that would, I don't know. Anyway, and then he gives his daughter in marriage. That would be a cousin marriage. I'm getting lost, sorry. That would be cousins marrying. But in actuality, I don't think that's what it was. Because Caleb was a Kenazite, is what it says. Which means that Kenaz was probably their forefather, their ancestor. So what is really going on is it's an uncle-niece wedding, which was not forbidden in that day. And it was probably, in all likelihood, it was probably approved. She probably wanted it. She actually jumped right in and started working with them on the land-related stuff. But I feel like I need to point that out because I don't want anyone to be misled or whatever by what we said. So that's what I think was going on there. So, anywho, that's worth pointing out. All right, we're almost done here. We ended last week trying to breeze through the last chapters. I think it was chapter 20 and chapter 21. And what happened there, let's review it because we didn't spend much time on it. What happened there was Benjamin was a whole tribe in Israel that had got wiped out. There was very few of them left. And they made the rest of the tribes swear this solemn oath saying, you'll never, ever give one of our daughters in marriage to those people. those wicked, blah, 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 you fill in the blank people. We will never do it. And so they made this oath. Now, what is the problem with that oath? If they never, ever allow these people to marry any of their daughters, what's going to happen?
We don't want them to know.
The Benjamites are going to disappear. You got no women. You kind of need them. You know, it's kind of tough to keep going without them, right? So, but yeah, hats off to you women. So they got in this situation where they're like, oh, no, and then they started mourning about it. They're like, man, a whole tribe is cut off from Israel. They're going to be no more. And why are they going to be no more? Was it God's fault?
No.
Whose fault was it? You made the promise. You went around telling everyone not to. Now, we get ourselves into so much trouble when we make these promises that we don't think through. We do it rashly or we do it quickly or whatever. Well, that's what they did. And so they devised a couple of little tricky plans to make it work, right? What did they do? Well, during the feast at Shiloh, they knew a bunch of these virgin girls were going to be out there dancing, performing, doing the thing they do. And so they kind of advised, hey, I'm not allowed to give you a wife. We promised. But there's going to be a whole bunch of girls over there. They're going to be on their way to this dance. And nobody's going to be watching them. And if they happen to disappear, well, that's not our fault. We didn't make that happen. Right. They get the message. And so each one, that must have been the highlight of the Benjamites' life. They got to go out there and catch me a woman. And that's exactly what they do. They run out there, they grab their wife, you're coming with me. Now, it's curious. I mean, were all the women really weak, or was there a strong one or two that they're like, get away from her, I can't take her. I don't know. See, this is why working out is important for women, because you just never know, right? So anyway, that's what they do. And the other tribes are mad. What have you done? That was my daughter. That was my. And then they say, hey, please, calm down. There was no other way to make this work. We just had to do it. And unfortunately, that's kind of true. They made a stupid vow. There was no other way to have it fixed. So kidnapping will just fix it, right? Well, that's what they did. And there again, we got to emphasize, this is the book of Judges. The book of Judges is not teaching us how to do things. The book of Judges is teaching us how not to do things. It is teaching us how bad people get when you start making exceptions to what God clearly said. Have I said that like 100 times now? Good, because I want to keep saying it, because inevitably somebody will come up to you and say, what about this? Look at what the Bible says. As if the Bible's trying to teach that it's a good thing. Just because it says something happened does not mean it's a good thing. More than likely, all this stuff is pretty bad. And that's the point. So that brings us to Judges chapter 3. Chapter 3. And that is confusing because we just went through the very end of the book of Judges, 17 through 21, which is sinking into sin with Dan and Benjamin and all the drama that went on with these guys. Now we're ready to jump to the third chapter, and most likely, we're guessing here, but most likely this is continuing the chronology where it picks up. And this is where we are ready to read. And so, Brandon, start us off. Read the first 6 verses of Judges chapter 3.
These are the nations that the Lord left in the land to test those Israelites who had not experienced the wars of Canaan. He did this to teach warfare to generations of Israelites who had no experience in battle. These are the nations, the Philistines, those living under the 5 Philistine rulers, the Canaanites, the Sidonians, and the Hivites living in the mountains of Lebanon. From what?
I like this community effort, guys. Just keep it up. That's right. We're going to get through this together.
From Mount, what's that word? Baal Hermon, right? Yeah. To, oh, Jesus.
Keep going. Yes, Jesus loves you.
Lebohamath. These people were left to test the Israelites, to see whether they would obey the commands the Lord had given to their ancestors through Moses. So the people of Israel lived among the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And they intermarried with them Israelite sons, married their daughters, and Israelite daughters were given in marriage to their sons, and the Israelites served their gods.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, good job. I'm not good with the names either, so no problem there. So it says that God, what does it say that God did? God let nations do what? He let these nations stick around. Why?
To test them.
In order to test them. Now, if you just read that out of context or just reading this, you would think, oh, so that's what happened. So, everything else that's why all these nations are around. But we know there's more to the story, right? What really happened? When we read through the book of Joshua, there was a very clear warning to kill all those nations, to wipe them out. But they didn't do it. And so as a result of them disobeying, there are these nations left. And then God says, I'm going to use these nations to test them, to see how obedient they will be. You see the difference? That's important. You gotta put these books together as far as the history of Israel goes. God wanted them to wipe them all out, but they didn't. And so God adapts to the next circumstance, and he says, well, they're here. I'm going to try to cause all things to work together for good. That's kind of what God does. So I'm going to use these nations as a test to see how obedient they will be. But how do they do on their test? Right off the bat, they're like, let's get married and combine our worship. Bad. Remember the illustration we had last week? It's a lot easier to what? Whatever. It's a lot easier to bring someone down than it is to lift them up. That's why in the New Testament it says, do not be unequally yoked. Not because it thinks, Christians are just the most righteous people in the world and non-Christians are the most evil. No, it's not saying that. What it is saying is that you guys do not share a common goal. And as a result, the one who's going to bring down is the easiest. I didn't say that very well, but you get the idea. The one who's trying to bring you down into the easy path is the one that's going to win over. So the Christian gets brought down. So that's why it's not supposed to happen. But they did. Verse 7 and 8 says, and the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and they forgot the Lord their God. They served the Baals and the Asheroth. Therefore, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he sold them into the hand of Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia, and the people of Israel served Cushan-Rishathaim 8 years. Okay, as far as the timeline goes, this is going to be 1378, this is BC of course, through 1332 BC. This is where we are in the timeline. 1378 through 1332 BC. And God...
You wrote 78. Is it 1338 or 1378?
78. 1378 through 1332.
That is correct.
Thank you, yeah.
Okay.
So that's the time period, and God allows them to be sold into the hands of what might... Does anyone have an NIV or a version like that? Does it say Cushan-Rishathaim, king of... What does your version say? Okay, Aram Naharim, which is it's the Hebrew word for two rivers. Nahar is river. So you could translate that Aram of the two rivers. So when you put this together, it almost sounds like this guy had a nickname, something like this Rishathaim person. It was a nickname given to him by the Israelites. And the nickname Rishathaim means double wicked. Doubly wicked. So... let's put this together. We've got double trouble from the Twin Rivers. Something like that, right? You got two rivers, you got double trouble, double wicked, double trouble from the Twin Rivers. That's what this guy was known for. It's kind of funny, but it's true. Verse 9. But when the people of Israel cried out to the Lord raised up a deliverer for the people of Israel, who saved them. Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother. Have we heard of him before? He's the guy that came on down and captured Booktown. It feels funny to say it that way, but captured Kiriath Sefer. The Spirit of the Lord was upon him, and he judged Israel. He went out to war, and the Lord gave Cushan-Rishathaim, or double trouble from Twin Rivers, into his hand, and his hand prevailed over Cushan-Rishathaim. So the land had rest for 40 years. Then Othniel, son of Kenaz, died. So, this is a good opportunity to review one other very important thing. That is the cycle of what actually happens in the book of Judges. What is that cycle? The people would sin, and when they sinned, it would lead them into a place where they were, they would suffer. And then once they suffered, they would get to the point where they would say, what? Oh God, I'm so sorry, I should have never done that. Help, they would cry out. And God, the thing that amazes me is that God would feel sorry for them. I mean, how many times are you like, I'm sick of this? But God actually does feel sorry for them, and so what would he do? He would save them. He would deliver them through a judge. And remember, a judge is not the gavel kind with the robe. It is a military leader, someone with skilled leadership. And they would have peace for a time until they drifted and began to sin all over again. And how many times does this happen in the book of Judges? 7 times. 7 times in the book of Judges. And we're seeing it right here. 40 years of peace, that's a long time. I'm not even 40 years old yet. I mean, 40 years. It's pretty significant, right? So that would be peace over the hill, right? Isn't that what they call 40? Do they still give out black balloons when you turn 40? They still do that?
Yes.
That's so nice of them. So nice of them. Oh boy. Sorry, guys. Verse 12. Willie, can I have you read verses 12 through 15?
Sure. Once again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. And because they did this evil, the Lord gave Eglon, king of Moab, power over Israel. Getting the Ammonites and Amalekites to join him, Eglon came and attacked Israel, and they took possession of the city of palms. The Israelites were subject to Eglon, king of Moab, for 18 years. Again, the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and he gave them a deliverer, Ehud, a left-handed man, the son of Jael the Benjamite. It's lucky they allow him to have a wife. The Israelites sent him with a tribute to Eglon, king of Moab.
Okay. So,
Sorry.
no, I'm glad you mentioned that. The people were sinning again, so God said, fine, I'm going to let you get conquered by a fat man. And that's what it says about King Eglon the Moabites. He was a very large, very fat man. And so they're suffering and they cry out. And so God sends them a deliverer. But this deliverer is a very unsuspecting one. What comes next in the book of Judges is going to be strange saviors. I'll write that down. Strange saviors. Is there an E in the end of strange? There is. Are you whispering about me over there? I can hear you whisper.
I was saying
so
you're going
loud.
to say a woman is a strange thing.
Oh, yeah, that's true too. But yeah, that's what comes next. So this guy, Eglon. Oh, we need to go over the chronology again. Sorry. We're at 1332 to 1236. So 1332 to 1286 BC is where we are now. But the deliverer came in the form of a left-handed man from the tribe of Benjamin. So right off the bat, what do we know about this guy? Well, if the tribe of Benjamin, remember what happened to them, what they were involved in? They were involved in something terrible where the majority of them got killed. So he's one of the lucky survivors, and even luckier to have a mama, have a wife, have a woman in their life. So what does that suggest about Benjamin? Well, he's probably got, it's got a stigma attached to it. I mean, if you were a Benjamite, this is close enough that people would be like, oh, you're from there? You're one of those people? And remember, this stigma will carry later on, because you remember the first king of Israel, what his name is? King Saul. And Saul is like, I'm from the tribe of Benjamin, and I'm least from my tribe. Why does it matter that he says, I'm from the tribe of Benjamin? Probably because Benjamin still had the reputation for how pathetic they were in this event that happened way back in the earlier times of Judges. So right off the bat, you've got a guy who's from the tribe of Benjamin, so he's barely even an Israelite, they might say. They wouldn't like him. Secondly, what's the other weird thing about him?
One.
Left-handed.
Yeah.
Left-handed. Now, I've heard different things about this. I've heard some people go so far to say it was considered a deformity to be left-handed in those days. In those days. Come on, in those days. But That's I don't know that it says it that much. Wait, how many left-handed people do we have in here? Just curious. All right, so now we know
watch
who
what you
the
say.
now we know who the strange ones are in the room. So left-handedness was at least looked at as something peculiar, usually not a good thing, but it did have one advantage. You remember what that advantage was?
Sword fight.
Military advantage. Military, because guys who fight left-handed, if majority of the people are right-handed fighting and you got a lefty, it throws you off. You're expecting them to attack a certain way and they can do it differently. So what would happen, you have a question?
No, I'm just saying, just remember that if y'all get in a fight with me.
All right, yeah, do remember. So what they would do, the kids that were young that wanted to grow up into the military from a very young age, they would strap their right hand down and make them learn to use their left hand so that they would grow up proficient in both. Because that gave them excellent military advantage. So it's possible that Ehud's one of these guys that just learned how to use his left hand really well, or he was just a left-handed man. But either way, he's a military guy. And so you're going to see as we read this, he's been used to bringing tribute to this King Eglon numerous times before. He's already established a reputation as a leader who's willing to represent his people and bring in the tribute. So it says about him in verse 16. Can you read verse 16?
So Ehud made himself a double-edged dagger that was 18 inches long, and he strapped it to his right thigh, keeping it hidden under his clothing.
Okay, why would he strap it to his right thigh?
Make it look like it's right.
Because they only patted down the other side. Because everyone was.
Yeah, if you're right-handed and you're trying to draw a sword from, that's kind of awkward, isn't it? I don't know, I feel like it is. Next time you're wearing your sword, just try it on the right side and see what you think. When you win your sword, try it. But it makes sense for a lefty to just really grab across. And you're right, most likely they just would have patted down and checked the left side, thinking that a right-handed man would be the one to come in there and do that. But this is what leads me to the conclusion that I think they already trusted this guy. I think he's done it probably numerous times before, and so they didn't see the need to check him again. They probably didn't check him as carefully because they would have caught something like that, you know? You have a thought?
What do you mean by paying tribute?
Paying, in other words, when the leader, I keep walking up like Eglon's on the board and he's not, so I don't know why I do that, but when you've got the king that took over your region, he lets you live there, but you have to pay taxes to him. You have to collect taxes and bring it all to him so that he wouldn't come in and steal more of your stuff or whatever. So that's what I mean. Ehud was the guy who was in charge of bringing all that to Mr. Fat King and giving it to him. On behalf
Just his tribe or all
Oh.
of Israel?
I think he was on behalf of, I think it was on behalf of his tribe and the people around that region. And this is the region of Moab. Do I have that on the map?
Yes.
All right, where's Ehud on this map? There he is. We're in this region.
It says the Israelites.
Yeah.
We're in this region right here. So the Israelites would, and the reason why I think it was only the people primarily here is because there's more going on up here with a different group of people. So I think some of this is happening around the same time. Well, oppression's coming in here, they're also getting hammered up here, and it's just, lots of problems. But he apparently had a reputation, so they thought he was trustworthy, and he used that to his advantage, right? You get that. So, verse 20. Bailey, you talked, so you read verse 20 through 23.
23.
Yeah, yes, please. 20 through 23.
And Ehud came to him as he was sitting alone in his cool roof chamber, and Ehud said, I have a message from God for you. And he arose from his seat. And Ehud reached with his left hand, took the sword from his right thigh, and thrust it into his belly. And the hilt also went in after the blade, and the fat closed over the blade, for he did not pull the sword out of his belly, and the dung came out. Then Ehud went out into the porch and closed the doors of the roof chamber behind him and locked them.
You ever wish the Bible was a little more specific sometimes?
Oh, really?
This story it's so,
Disgusting.
wow, it is so accurate. So accurate to, you medical people, this is nothing new. It's like, that's every day of my life. But to the rest of us, normal people, that is gross and disgusting and not something we want to see. So he comes in and, smart comment, yes, go.
Huh?
I'm just kidding.
All right. Just want to kind of get an idea for the scale of these things. Each one of
Okay.
those tribes, basically, like what?
Oh,
Like
these
one
are
of those
not the
tiny
tribal
little
maps.
towns?
These are,
Judges.
yeah, these are the judges who, and this is where they were living in that
Yeah.
region. So they would have a sphere of influence in their area. You know what I mean?
So-
That's kind of the scale.
So it's kind of like if Samson wanted to go attack Ehud, that'd be like,
Oh, no, don't think that way. These
Oh.
are different time periods and everything. All I want you to know is when we get to Samson, he's going to be dealing with the Philistines. Well, the Philistines occupied this whole region along the coastal side.
so that'd
of
be
here.
the size of Brevard County, right?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you that. This is modern day Turkey. And all I know about Turkey is you eat it.
Is-
All right.
The,
You figured it out.
But when we're dealing with Ehud, this is the Moabites, and Ammon and Moab were close. There's Moab right there. So this particular region where they had their control. So yeah, this is a different kind of map. It's for individuals, not for locations. So,
Thanks.
and that's why Ehud was dealing with the Moabites. Which, by the way, who also was a Moabite or a Moabite woman? Ruth. We're going to get to her later, but she would be one of these people that is in Moab with King Eglon. So Ehud comes in and he uses his first of all, though, the men are he's strategic. He has some men with him. He pays the tribute, but then he walks back to a certain area, and it says in your Bible, probably I don't remember where, if it's the place where the idols were or the porch was or something like that. And then he stops there and he says, "Hey, I have a secret message for the king." And so they probably, we're brainstorming here, but they're probably thinking, oh, if this is a secret message, maybe there's a revolt coming. And, you know, our guy Ehud has been loyal to us for a long time. So he's probably going to tell the king what's really going to happen. There's going to be some sort of revolt among the Israelites. So they say, all right, come on in. And then the king, Eglon, says, you know, he dismisses all his servants because this is real hush-hush. Nobody should hear this. And so right then, he's got him alone. So you can tell he must have trusted the guy. And then he says, this message is from the Lord. Now, Eglon starts to stand up. Now, that may seem insignificant, but when you're really, really, really fat, standing up is a big deal, right? So it's probably out of respect for God to some extent. A message from the Lord, well, maybe he's trying to show some sort of courtesy of respect. But while he does that, that's the opportunity. He's getting up and he plunges it, and then the fat just right over the leg. But if that's not gross enough, what happens after that is even worse. And then he's able to get out. But how is he able to get out? We didn't read that yet, did we?
No.
We didn't read that yet. Well, where are we? Verse
We
20.
did read it, it just didn't translate that way.
23.
23. Oh, we just finished 23.
Yeah.
24. When he had gone, the servants came.
No, 23.
Oh, we didn't read 23? Then Ehud went out into the porch and closed the doors of the roof chamber behind him and locked them. When they had gone, the servants came, and when they saw that the doors of the roof chamber were locked, they thought, surely he is relieving himself in the closet of the cool chamber, aka he's using the bathroom. They probably smelled something too, which would have led them to think, yeah, he's probably pretty busy right now. And so it worked out to his advantage. And it says, oh, I like the way it says it. Surely he's relieving himself in the cool. And they waited till they were embarrassed. Sorry, this is sorry. But when he still did not open the doors of the roof chamber, they took the key and opened them, and there lay their lord dead on the floor. Ehud escaped while they had delayed and passed beyond the idols. That's where he parted with the other guys, and escaped to Sisera. When he arrived, he sounded the trumpet in the hill country of Ephraim, and the people of Israel went down with him from the hill country, and he was their leader. And he said to them, "Follow after me, for the Lord has given your enemies, the Moabites, into your hand." So they went down after him and seized the fords of the Jordan against the Moabites, and did not allow anyone to pass over. They killed at that time about 10,000 of the Moabites, all strong, able-bodied men. Not a man escaped. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest for 80 years. 80 years. Now, some people suggest, and we can't prove this, I guess, so we're just suggesting it, but how did he escape? What is this porch way that he got out of there? Some people think it was actually a sewer system that he had to escape through to get out. Does your translation say that, really?
Well, it says he escaped down the latrine.
Down the latrine. Way more descriptive, you know. Down the latrine could be a description for the whole book of Judges, by the way. Sewer access. Yeah. So he sometimes, I don't know. I struggle sometimes with how many lessons we're supposed to pick out from Bible characters. But it seems as though Ehud is spoken of in a positive light, and it seems as though the things that he did were appropriate for the time. And it makes me wonder, how would we apply leadership like that to us, to our day and age? You ever think about that? Is there a lesson that we could learn? Well, sometimes, two things. Sometimes when you,
My Bible has a thing on Ehud and lessons from his life.
well, that's cheating. Can't do that.
Cheater.
Not what this thing says.
Oh, really? It's got, well, that's nice.
That
That's
doesn't
still
say
cheating.
much.
I'm just kidding. That's so funny. So it's one of those study Bibles or whatever.
Well, Tony bought it.
So it's all Tony's fault. I knew it.
He accounted for this.
So sometimes when you're doing God's work, sometimes it takes a lot of patience. I mean, apparently Ehud did not just come right in and make it happen. He had to establish a reputation with these guys in order for them to trust him. And he did. By the way, when you work at a church or with a group of Christians and you see, these people need to change some things about themselves. Let's look to Ehud here. You don't just come right in and say, let's change things. You work with them for quite a while. It's the same old story over and over again. New guy comes in, wants to make all these changes. New guy fired. Another guy hired. You know, over and over again. You don't want to do that in ministry. You got to be patient with people, and nobody, not even you, nobody likes change. It takes some time to adapt. They need to understand why. Ehud takes that time, but then he's not afraid to get his hands dirty. Can't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Sometimes the work that you do is not pleasant, is not fun. It is just ugly, and you wish I never wanted to be a part of this drama, never wanted to be a part of this situation. I wish I could just wash my hands of this and get out. But maybe the only way out is through the sewer. Maybe the only way out is just finishing what you started and being patient with someone even though their life is messy. That's kind of what discipleship is, dealing with all the problems that we have and doing what God says, confessing our sins to one another, praying for each other so that we can be healed and we can stop stinking so bad. So those are all important. That puts us at one more verse, right?
Right.
This one verse summarizes a whole lot, but it's only one verse. So who have I not picked on yet?
Me.
All right, Gabe. You want to read one verse? Go.
After him was Shamgar, the son of An, who killed 600 of the Philistines with an ox goad, and he also saved Israel.
All right. Shamgar. Now, can you see how this guy would also be a strange savior? Madman with an ox goad. What's a goad? Yeah.
Like a prod.
Yeah. It's one of those things that you poke animals with to get them to move. Poke, 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 you know. Well, he could herd his animals, his oxen, and then attack people with it. He was handy with this very unusual weapon. And he killed 600 people. That's a lot of people. That's like, what? Killing 2 of our congregations with the madman. That's yeah. So he established himself a reputation for that. And since this is the Philistines, and notice he's up here. So the Philistines were gaining power and controlling the whole coast. And yet he was giving them grief there, and God used him. It's only one verse mentioned about this guy, and it makes him kind of strange. But I take that back. There's one more verse in the 5th chapter that just briefly says his name again, but it lets you know that he was known. He was probably a legendary fellow. I mean, killing 600 people in a battle with this one rod, that's pretty legendary, you'd think. But when there's little information about something in the Bible, then people have all kinds of speculation. Some of the speculation that they have for this guy is, well, Shamgar is not a Hebrew name. So they wonder if this guy was actually a Gentile, which would be surprising, but not out of the question at this time. You know, it seems like a lot of things went. And sometimes God uses very unsuspecting people. So it's entirely possible that this guy might have been of a Gentile origin and kind of assimilated with the people and took sides with them. But we don't really know, so we can't say for certain. Is there any questions on this third chapter before we move to chapter 4?
What is that guy's name that killed all of the people, that came down and killed the king?
Ehud, E-H-U-D, the one that stabbed him in the belly? Yeah, Ehud. And then Shamgar was up north. Now 1300 is just a guess as to when this guy was. So it would have been around the same time as the peace with Ehud. So problems are happening all around. All right. That brings us to chapter 4. We can get started in that for a little bit. Did I miss someone? I really feel like I'm missing somebody. All right, maybe I didn't. I'm going to start off reading. Chapter 4, verse 1 says, "And the people of Israel," here we go, they're going to change. "And the people of Israel did again what was evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud died. And the Lord," here we go, evil in the sight of the Lord. "And so the Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Hasereth Hagoyim. Then the people of Israel, the people of Israel cried out to the Lord," God, we're so sorry, "for help. For he had 900 chariots of iron and oppressed the people of Israel cruelly for 20 years. Oh, that's a huge weapon there. Now Deborah was prophetess. The wife of Lapidoth was judging Israel at that time. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah." By the way, it probably was named after her, not like, "Oh, look, the palm of Deborah, and I'm Deborah." It was destiny. You know, it's not like that. They named it after her probably. "The palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the people of Israel came up to her for judgment." Now, if we were right, and Shamgar was a Gentile judging, that's not the ideal leader of choice, but if he was, he was. Now we've got Deborah, the prophetess, leading. What's wrong with that picture? It's a woman. Is a woman, I don't mean this in a bad way, I'm not saying about worth, anything like that, or qualifications. What I am saying is, according to what God has stated throughout Scripture, did he want a woman to be the leader of the people? No, nowhere in the Bible does he assign that. That is not the function that he wants. So, first question is, why was it happening? Second question is, why was God supporting it? Because God says in the New Testament that he wants men to step up and take the leadership. That's called manning up. That's what you got to do. So, why would he bless and prosper Deborah when she was not a man?
All the other guys sucked at their job.
You have a way with words, Chris, but I do kind of agree with what you're saying. The other guys stunk. Yeah. In other words, there was probably no guy willing to step up and take leadership at all. And the context kind of suggests that too. There was probably no one there willing to step up. And so guess what? Rather than having no leader, this prophetess, this woman Deborah, who probably knew exactly what God wanted, decided to step up. And what's interesting is that God blesses her for that. God wins a victory through her and through another woman later on. And I think there's a lesson in that. It's very easy to get in these debates about gender roles in the church, and they're important because what God says is what God says, and we need to take them seriously. But examples like this, I think, are also important. We got to learn from them, because sometimes we get in situations where the ideal, what God really wants to happen, is absolutely impossible because our sin and our circumstances have let us get to that point. So the next question is, what is the next best thing we can do to get to where God wants? Real life example, when I got here as an old 12-year-old to this church, there were not enough elders. I don't even know if we had a stable eldership at the time. Maybe you could remind me, but Anyway, at the end of the day, there were not enough people qualified to be elders. But yet every church, the Bible's pretty clear, elders, it's supposed to have elders in the church. So what did we do? Well, we ended up having the men of the church meet together on a regular basis until the church grew enough and had enough men who were mature enough and qualified to be elders, and then we got elders. Now, why did we do that? Well, not because it was the ideal, but it was because and we determined it was the easiest way to get to the ideal. And I think it was a smart thing to do. But if you don't like it, I had nothing to do with it. I was way too young. Nothing to do with that. But sometimes that's what happens. And I would argue from Deborah's example that is okay. That God wants people to step up. And sometimes that means that the people who are, not gifted, not qualified, not best suited, still need to step up because there's nobody else. There's absolutely nobody else. And if that's the case, you got to step in. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, the problem is when you start getting prideful and you don't want to leave. You're like, this is my position. This is what I have done. That's an attitude that all of a sudden makes us superior, and God opposes the proud. So we don't want to get to that position. But when somebody steps in to fill a role that is desperately needed, that God wants filled, even though they're not the best one for the job, that is not always the worst thing. Sometimes, in some instances, it's better, false doctrine and things like that, to say, no, we're not having that. And, I guess that's case by case. But do you understand what I'm saying? Sometimes we have to see the need and we have to step up and meet it until the right person comes along to take it over. Does that make sense? All right, you're nodding yes. Let's take our 5-minute break.
Alrighty, guys. Just warning you, I'm turning the camera back on, so don't say anything mean. Alrighty, so we're in the 4th chapter, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. 4th chapter, and I believe we left off around verse 6. So Gabe, could I get you to read verses 6 through 8 for me? And this is in the context of Deborah, the woman judge.
Okay. She sent and summoned Barak, the son of Abnoam, from Kadesh, Naphtali, and said to him, Has not the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you? Go gather your men at Mount Tabor, taking 10,000 from the people of Naphtali and the people of Zebulun. What verse?
That's verse 8.
And I will draw out Sisera, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you where the river Kishon with his chariots and his troops, and I will give him into your hand. Barak said to her, If you will go with me, I will go, but if you will not go with me, I will not go.
Did you guys get that male leadership there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how you do it. You just say, well, honey, I'll go if you go with me, but otherwise I'm not going. Yeah. So exactly, Deborah's going to have to hold his hand to get him to do anything. So that's probably why Deborah was the judge and not him, because he just, he probably represented the people of his day. The men were not manning up. Verse 9 says, And she said, I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your glory, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. Then Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. And Barak called out Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and 10,000 men went up at his heels, and Deborah went up with him. Now, Heber, the Kenite, had separated from the Kenites, the descendants of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and had pitched his tent as far away as the oak of Zahanaim, which is near Kadesh. When Sisera was told that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone to Mount Tabor, Sisera called out all his chariots, 900 chariots of iron, and all the men who were with him, from Harosheth Hagoyim to the river Kishon. And Deborah said to Barak, Up! For this is the day in which the Lord has given Sisera into your hand. Does not the Lord go out before you? it's almost as though she's pep talking him again. Come on, get up, go. God's fighting for you. Don't be afraid. I'm going to let go of my hand now, and you're going to go fight, okay? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. And the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and all his army before Barak by the edge of the sword. And Sisera got down from his chariot and fled away on foot. And Barak pursued the chariots and the army to Harosheth Hagoyim. And all the army of Sisera fell by the edge of the sword. Not a man was left. Now, why do you think he was scared? Barak. Why do you think he was afraid to fight?
They had 900.
What's that?
They had 900 chariots.
900 iron chariots. I mean, think about the military advantage that would be in that day. And you guys, I think most of you already know this, but you know, chariots of iron, not only do you just plow over people, I mean, that weight is going to kill you, but a lot of nations would do what with the wheels?
But spikes.
Stick spikes or razor sharp blades coming out the side, and they were just literally mowing down people. Sick sense of humor over there. But no, I'm sorry, I just teasing really. But no, they would just go through them like it was nothing. And so you can see how if you're a soldier on foot, that would be incredibly intimidating. But thankfully, the leader of the situation, Deborah, has the faith eyes. She sees God is on our side. She was a prophetess, so she could assure him, no, you need to get out there. God's got this for you. And he does, and he wins with 10,000 men taking them down. So iron chariots would give you that advantage, but not against God. It just doesn't work then. Verse 17, but Sisera fled away on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. For there was peace between Jabin, the king of Hazor, and the house of Heber the Kenite. And Jael came out to meet Sisera and said to him, turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me, and do not be afraid. So he turned aside to her tent, and she covered him with a rug. And he said to her, please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. So she opened a skin of milk and gave him a drink and covered him. And he said to her, stand at the opening of the tent. If any man comes and asks you, is anyone here? Say no. But Jael, wife of Heber, took a tent peg and took a hammer in her hand. Then she went softly to him and drove the peg into his temple until it went down into the ground while he was laying fast asleep from weariness. So he died, and behold, as Barak was pursuing Sisera, Jael went out to meet him and said to him, come, I will show you the man you are seeking. So he went into her tent, and there lay Sisera dead with a tent peg in his temple. So on that day God subdued Jabin, the king of Canaan, before the people of Israel, and the hand of the people of Israel pressed harder and harder against Jabin, the king of Canaan, until they destroyed Jabin, king of Canaan. Now, I am just curious in my own mind about that picture. This woman was able to drive a tent peg, a stake, into the side of Sisera's head. Now, it says though, right, and it's funny that it puts this description in, it goes all the way through into the ground. Isn't that what it said? Mm-hmm. How much strength does that take? I hope none of you actually know the answer to that. But conceivably, you're breaking two bones and a lot of, some more padding than others, I guess, in there. But you're busting through a whole lot of stuff. I've just heard that is incredibly difficult, and it makes me think this woman was probably not just, probably not a girl, probably not a wimp. She clearly was strong.
She was still a girl.
Sorry. You're right. Poor choice of words. I'm sorry. I should have said that. She was not a wimp, as far as I meant that in a different way, but whatever.
She wasn't a
Not a girly girl, not a wimp. She was brave, and I have to wonder what Barak would have thought when he walks up to this tent. She says, "Here, let me show you where he is," and he sees. You did that? So it's as though, why would God include something like that in the Bible? I mean, remember, we're dealing with, at this time, second-class citizens, people who can't testify in court. They are sometimes treated as property in the nations around there. Why would God include this? Well,
Give her credit.
I think he is giving her credit. He is, and whenever we read stuff like this, we got to recognize God is actually elevating women in general. Compared to the time of their day, if this were a fake document, or if this were made up as just some, religious thing, they wouldn't have put this down. Because there's no reason to put that down. That's not going to win you any brownie points with anyone at this time. But yet God's telling us the truth of what happened, and he's also hinting at the fact that women are just as important in his eyes, just as significant, and he is willing to work with them. If the men will not stand up and do what they're supposed to do, he'll let the women take their place and do it. You know what I mean? So I think that is a wonderful tribute to her. Yeah?
Is she a Gentile?
I do not know that one. I don't think she is, but I don't know.
Heber the Canaanite left the other Canaanites, descendants of Hobad, Moses' brother-in-law, his wife, right?
Because
she
the
could have been
Kenite would be a
Jewish.
Jew.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because that's Caleb's line. So I think she was a Jew.
Okay.
Because that would be really shocking. A Gentile woman.
Yeah.
That would be very shocking. That brings us to Judges chapter 5. And this is good. We get to have a taste of the ancient music. And then you can see how well it's evolved over the millennium. If someone wants to sing this, I don't know how you would. I really don't know. But apparently there was a way. And Deborah and Barak rocked this song that day. And that's what it says in verse 5. So, I don't know. Does that mean they were both singing it? I guess it does. I guess it does. By the way, this is what, when you get to the life of King David, you recognize David was a popular musician of his day. And he had the equivalent of the electric guitar, the harp. That was the electric guitar of their day, was the harp. And he could rock his harp, and they wrote songs about him, and all the girls loved him. And I'm not making this up. That is basically what the Bible says about the guy. So, but anyway, then sang Deborah and Barak, the son of Abinoam, on that day, that the leaders took the lead in Israel. Oh, that's a funny thing for them to say. That the people offered themselves willingly. Bless the Lord. Hear, O kings, give ear. O princes, to the Lord I will sing. I will make melody to the Lord, the God of Israel. Lord, when you went out from Seir, which is a chief mountain in the land of Edom, when you marched from the region of Edom, the earth trembled and the heavens dropped. Yes, the clouds dropped water. The mountains quaked before the Lord, even Sinai before the Lord, the God of Israel. In the days of Shamgar, now he's mentioned again, son of Anath, in the days of Jael, the highways were abandoned, and travelers kept to the byways. The villagers ceased in Israel. They ceased to be until I arose. I, Deborah, arose as a mother in Israel. It seems like what she's actually pointing out here is the fact that there was not that leadership. There was nobody willing to step up and take control until I, Deborah, arose. Verse 8 says, when new gods were chosen, then war was in the gates. Was shield or spear to be seen among 40,000 in Israel? There again, no leader. There's nobody willing to step up to the plate. Could you read verses 9 through 11, please?
My heart goes out to Israel's leaders and to those who gladly follow, bless the Lord, and who rides on fine donkeys and sit on fancy saddle blankets, listen. And you who must walk along the road, listen. Listen to the village musicians gathered at the watering holes. They recount the righteous victories of the Lord and the victories of his villages in Israel. Then the people of the Lord marched down to the city gate. Wake up, Deborah, wake up. Wake up, wake up, and sing a song. Arise, Barak, lead your captives away, son of Abinoam. Down from Tabor marched the remnant against the mighty. The people of the Lord marched down against mighty warriors. They came down from Ephraim, a land that once belonged to the Amalekites, and Benjamin also followed you. From Machir, the commanders marched down from Zebulun, came those who carried the rod of authority. Is that?
That's good. We can stop there. So this is a description, and I'm glad you read it, of the people who actually were willing to step up and help out. So it's as though there was nobody, there's no good leadership until I, Deborah, stepped up and took command. And then I wanted help, obviously. And then after pursuing that, she starts to sing praise for these few people who were willing to get up and take some leadership. And she calls them out, kind of a praise kind of a thing. And who is that she calls out? Well, what does it say? She praises Barak, for one. It says, get up, do something, you know. So anyway, that's kind of the positive thing. But then after this, she's going to shift gears in this song and start talking about the people who didn't do anything. So Gabe, read verses 15 through 17 for me.
The princes of Issachar came with Deborah, and Issachar faithful to Barak. And into the valley they rushed at his heels. Among the clans of Reuben there were great searchings of heart. Why did you sit still among the sheepfolds to hear the whistling for the flocks among the clans of Reuben? There were great searchings of heart. Gilad stayed beyond the Jordan, and Dan, why did he stay with the ships? Asher sat still at the coast of the sea, staying by his landings. Zebulun is a people who risk their lives to the death. Naphtali, too, on the heights of the field. Is that reason much?
That's fine. That's fine.
I read 18.
Okay, you read 18? No, that's fine. But in verse 17, she mentions the name of Reuben, the name of Gilead, and Dan, and Asher. But what is she saying there? She says, in the middle part of verse 15, among the clans of Reuben there were great searchings of heart. Why do you sit among the sheepfolds to hear the whistling for flocks among the clans of Reuben? There were great searchings of heart. And then it shifts gears to Gilead. Well, what is going on here? Searchings of heart, that is pondering, trying to figure things out. At the end of the day, what's going on here is she is actually talking about the people who did not help in this battle. And guess what? Reuben had good intentions. Yeah, they didn't actually help out in the battle, and she's calling them out for it, but they really thought about it. They're really for you. I really want you to do well. It's like the guy in James that said, keep warm and well fed. Go on, man, get out there. But he didn't do anything. Well, Reuben had really good intentions, and man, we can think of a lot of people that fit this, right? Unfortunately, us at times, we have really great intentions, just don't quite get around to actually doing it. Great searchings of heart in Reuben. Gilead, which the Gileadites were east of Manasseh and Gad, so this is a town or like a city, they wanted to dwell in security. They were in a safe place to be, and so they didn't want to give up their safe place. So the excuses being made here is, oh, that's a really great idea. We really should get involved tomorrow. And they don't get involved. These people are more honest. They say, man, I'm comfortable right where I'm at. It's safe right here. And that's too risky. Can't get out there and help win the battle. Now, Dan and Asher, on the other hand, they are located in a place where trade is doing very well. So they could care less about what's going on. Forget these battles. We're making money. Life is good. I'm living the distraction. So do you see how these excuses can actually apply in so many other ways? You got people who, oh yeah, I'm supportive of that. Their actions aren't. They just say they are. Unfortunately, a lot of Christian people fit that. They're all talk. They don't actually do. Then you got the Gileadites who are, well, let's be safe here. Let's not actually go and take too much of a risk. Let's be cautious, safe. Let's not go anywhere. And then you got people like this that, I've got other priorities. I've got other things to do. Things are going well in my life. Why would I mess it up with this religious stuff that I'm supposed to, with following God and His people? Why would I do that? You see the excuses? I think that's very interesting myself. And you read verse 18. This is 18 and following is praising people. Are you raising your hand, or are you just exhausted from this long lesson? You're just like, oh, I'm dying over here. Yeah, okay. verse 18 and following praises those people who did fight. And I'm going to read real slow, Gabe. I'm just kidding. The kings came, they fought. Then fought the kings of Canaan at Tanakh by the waters of Megiddo. They got no spoils of silver. From heaven the stars fought. From their courses they fought against Sisera. That was God on Israel's side. The torrent Kishon swept them away. That's the river. The ancient torrent, the torrent Kishon. March on, my soul, with might. Then loud beat the horses' hooves with galloping of his steeds. Curse Meroz, says the angel of the Lord. Ooh. Curse its inhabitants thoroughly, because they did not come to the help of the Lord, to the help of the Lord against the mighty. The city of Meroz, which I don't think I have it on any of these maps, they were located very close to where this battle was fought against Sisera. And not only were they very close and refused to help, didn't send any of their men out to help, after Sisera was losing and the Israelites were chasing him away, they had another opportunity. They said, hey, get your men out, help us pursue, we're winning. And they still didn't put their men out. They said, no, we're staying right here. You guys can do what you need to do. They are remaining neutral. They are staying out of this one. And because of that, she feels the need, Deborah feels the need, and actually it's the angel of the Lord feels the need to call them out and say, they are cursed, because they didn't even lift a finger. Now, how does that pair up? I mean, these people are spoken of badly, but the ones that you had so many opportunities and you never took them, you don't want to be that person. You just don't. Don't let fear or whatever it is limit you from taking advantage of whatever God's put right in front of you. And sometimes it's so easy. Sometimes just get up, just follow that Christian crowd there. They'll help you get going in the right direction. But you got to be willing to get up. So, can I get a reader for verse 24 through 27 named Bailey?
Most blessed of women be Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, of tent-dwelling women, most blessed. He asked water, and she gave him milk. She brought him curds in a noble bowl. She sent her hand to the tent peg, and her right hand to the workman's mallet. She struck Sisera, she crushed his head, she shattered and pierced his temple. Between her feet he sank, he fell, he lay still between her feet. He sank, he fell. Where he sank, there he fell, dead.
You think he's dead?
He's dead.
I love the wording of this. Where he sank, he fell. This is the breakdown of the song, right? You know, every good chorus has like the words you repeat 10 times. Well, here we go. He's dead, he's dead, he's dead, over and over again. She killed him, he's dead. And then we have the sadness part of the scripture. Now, this is the sadness of Sisera's women, which it makes sense if a woman's writing this. She would compare to, now, how would his wife and his daughters feel about this situation going on? Willie, can you read verses 28 through the rest of the chapter? It's 31, I believe, right?
Yep. Okay. Through the window appeared Sisera's mother. Behind the lattice she cried out, why is his chariot so long in coming? Why is the clatter of his chariots delayed? The wisest of her ladies answered her. Indeed, she keeps saying to herself, are they not finding and dividing the spoils? A girl or two for each man? Colorful garments as plunder for Sisera? Colorful garments embroidered, highly embroidered garments for my neck? All this as plunder? So may all your enemies perish, O Lord, but may they who love you be like the sun when it rises in its strength. Then the land had peace 40 years.
So what is it these women of Sisera are saying? How would you summarize that? Well, they've been gone a long time.
Must be a lot of plunder.
They must be really winning. Yeah, I bet you they're taking all kinds of spoils in. Oh, they're probably so many women slaves they're bringing back, they're probably having to carry one in each arm, you know? Yeah, they're busy. Whew, they're probably filling up those 900 chariots. And then she shifts gears, Deborah does, and say, God, may all people who are against you be like that. Isn't it interesting? I just have to wonder how many times do we find it so easy to live in the same kind of denial? Well, I know it'll work out, you know. Well, why? Why do you know that? Well, just wait. Just hold up a little longer. I'm going to get around to something good. But we kind of hold out thinking, I'm sure things are, you know, I'm living the right path. I'm doing what I should. And that's why Romans class, I think, is so cool, because remind you that it's grace that saves us, and yet so many of us are naturally going to that law works mountain and saying, well, I did this and this and this, and yeah, you know, I feel pretty good. I think I'm okay. I'm going to forget about it, go live my life for a while, and then someone asks, you know, are you right with God? Well, yeah, I keep the commandments, and I hadn't killed anyone. That's my favorite answer. I hadn't killed anybody. 'Cause that's so hard to do. Anyway, you get the idea. We don't want to be in denial. So let's go ahead and close with prayer. God, I pray that you would keep our eyes open. God, please help the leadership that your kingdom needs to happen. And God, you have a place for all of us. We know that. Men or women, boys or girls, or whatever. We know that we all have work to do, and that we have gifts that you have given us. But God, we have opportunities even in areas where maybe we don't feel gifted. And so God, I want to pray for the bravery of anyone here, any of us, to step up and take on the challenge rather than drop the ball, because the work that you're doing is way too important for us to neglect. So please help us to have our eyes on the prize, and to keep our mind where it needs to be, and to not get distracted by all the idols that we are living around, the materials, the wealth, and the distractions. And I pray this in Jesus' name.
Thank you.
People always ask, what is